to Healthcare Boulevard. I am your host, Sena Kakpomo, back on the mic. Today is just me, no guest today. I'm going to do this the second part of just giving you info on the profession, in which case this is a physician assistant, referred to as PA from now on for the most part. But first of all, thank you all who've downloaded this, who've watched this, who've liked this, who've started following me on the different mediums, whether that's YouTube or one of the podcast mediums. I've even noticed some folks are listening from France. So, bonjour. Merci de nous joindre. And I truly appreciate y'all and for sharing, because I really do want to get this out to the ears that need it and of the folks who need it. And that is the best way that we can I can get the job done here, which I've given myself the job description of shining some light on every healthcare professional out there. And I will miss some stuff as I progress, but as I progress and get through the list, I will make sure I don't miss anything, and I am more than open to any suggestions, any collaborations, and thus far. That being said, if it wasn't clear already, I know last time we spoke, I mentioned that I was working on getting on podcast space instead of just being on YouTube, and I've done that. I'm now on all podcast mediums from Google to Apple, Spotify, and so forth. The only three that I haven't that you can find me on is iHeart Radio, Pandora, and Amazon. But those, I've done my part. Those are just taking longer for approval and things like that. So when those are done, hopefully by the time I'm back on the mic with you, I can say that you can find me anywhere. But for now, you still do have a lot of options, and I appreciate the share, the like, the comments, and the support. Okay, so by now we're on the PA Avenue, right? We're on the PA corner of this boulevard. And last time we spoke on the history of PAs, how the profession was born. Briefly talked about what PAs do, who they are, and how to become a PA. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get into a less technical stuff. So let's say then you've gone through that process and you're like, yeah, I'm a PA. Or even before that, to be honest, these are all things to consider before you even make the decision. Do I want to become a PA? Do I want to become a nurse of any kind? Because when I say nurse, that can be anything from LPN to RN to NP, so and so forth. And I will, once we get to the nurse street, I will get into that. Or do I want to become a PT or a pharmacist and so forth? So some of the things I've discussed today include life balance. So life balance. So one of the things that's been like the shining star, I guess, about PAs is that there's been the talk on the street that PAs have a more balanced lifestyle than MDs. Usually a lot of things are compared to MDs, especially when you're talking about advanced practitioners. And if you haven't heard that term before, or if you're not familiar with what that term is, advanced practitioner is a term used to describe PAs and NPs, and even OT is occupational therapy, and I'm not sure about pharmacy, but I do know NP and PA are two definitely that are in that category. So they're not at the highest, like they're not MDs or doctors or have a PhD in the field or in the profession, but they are also not mid-level either. So advanced practitioner, you might find that term in the in the B's. In the B's, you might heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm an advanced practitioner," or things like that. Even as I look for a job posting and things like that, some we'll just say looking for advanced practitioner instead of NP/PA. And so that's a term that, you can use or recognize if you're searching on your route to what to do in healthcare and so forth. So as talking about work life balance, it is true that PAs generally can have more work-life balance than MDs, but honestly, it really depends on what you're doing as a PA. And what do I mean by that? We talked about the definition of PA last time. So that remembering that, that up until now and to this day, a lot of PAs work collaboratively with MDs, right? There are some states like Utah just passed a bill or law, whatever you might call it. Not too technical with the political words, that essentially give more autonomy to PAs. The technicalities of that bill or what have you is now the point of this discussion. And Cali just recently, well, not so recently, but had passed the OTP. And so it's different states are at different level of autonomy that they give to PAs and NPs, which again are both advanced practitioners. And so what your life balance is like as a PA really truly depends on what field you work in. We have PAs in ER, right? We have PAs in surgery. We have PAs in cardiothoracic. We have PAs in orthopedic. We have PAs in neuro. One of the positions I'm actually looking at right now is a neuro position. We have PAs in OBGYN, which actually is one of my favorite fields as well up there. PAs in pediatrics. So this all gives you a hint that, okay, as a PA, you really truly can work in any health setting. And since oftentimes you're either working side by side, and by side by side, I don't mean that MD has to be there, but I do mean you're working with an MD in terms of it's likely they own the practice if it's a clinic, or if you're in a hospital, you're collaborating with them, right? So your hours really depends on what the hospital needs or what the clinic needs, right? So for example, one of the positions I'm looking at is a neuro PA, right? So I went there and talked to them recently and just spent a few hours looking at how things work and so forth. And that day I didn't see the MD at all, because he owns multiple locations. He owns clinic in different locations, and he doesn't need to be in the building for a PA or NP to work there. So I spoke with the NPs and followed them around with sort of the gist of it, the EMR and things like that. But the point is you're collaborating with the MD. So your hours, the hours you work and the life balance you have truly depends on what the position is. But again, on average, generally speaking, PAs tend to have a better work-life balance than MDs. And also in general, if you are in a clinic setting, you are more, or in a smaller practice, you're more likely to have a better work-life balance than if you're in a hospital or a big medical group. Excuse me. One of the last clinical rotation I had before I graduated was for an orthopedic surgical group, and here I worked. They had MDs and they had PAs. So the MD here, I got to talk to him. Very nice group of folks, and he was saying he really truly wanted to work in a clinic versus a hospital because he wanted the autonomy, which he had. He wanted the steady hours, which he had, and it's more for him. It's more stable, and it gives him more work-life balance. Now, does it mean that he's more that he's busier than the PA necessarily? Not necessarily. The PA has different hours than he does, just because of different needs. So I think I've gone down way too deep into this. But you choose for yourself. You really, as a PA, and much like any profession or any healthcare professional, you really make it what you want to make it. I've heard of PAs who only work 3 days a week, and they're making enough to sustain them for what they need. I've heard of PAs who are working 5 days a week, and that's what they want. And so it really depends on what path you want. And oftentimes, maybe not a lot, but yeah, a good amount of PAs usually not what you end up doing first time after graduation is not necessarily where you're gonna end up like 10 years or 5 years down the road. And so just keep that in mind. Anyways, so I feel like I went way too deep into that. I think I did. But the other thing is salary, and that's pretty decently straightforward. There are a few things I use. So I oftentimes go to BLS.gov to get statistics about any profession. Like, I was introduced to this way back in community college when I was lost in my career and didn't quite know what to do after rejections from nursing school. And my mentor at the time suggested I use this to sort of get a gaze of the new professions that I'm looking at and researching and considering getting into. So I use this, and I've recommended this to a few folks who unfortunately ended up being in my position where they were really having to make a life decision as to what profession to choose. And knowing the amount of money you'll be making decently or about after the profession, it's not the biggest thing, but it definitely does play a role, right? Because you are being presented with how much your education will cost you, how long your education will cost you, how much stress your education will cost you. It's only fair that you know the reward, or at least the monetary reward. This is a monetary reward, the extrinsic reward of said profession. And so on BLS.gov, if you look up physician assistant, you see, so I love the quick facts because they tell you the annual median pay. So hourly is $53. Yearly is $112,000. $112,000. Yeah. I haven't read numbers out loud for a while. I used to just look at them and know what they mean. I haven't read numbers out loud in a while, so forgive me if I'm like, is that how you read that? So it's 112,260 is what they have here as a median. That, again, for those of us who haven't done like basic math in a while, median is just, it's the middle, right? It's like there'll be some numbers that are lower than that, some that will be higher than that. And keep in mind that, of course, depends on where you're working, what specialty you're working in, what state you're working in, because oftentimes that follows the price of living and so forth. Of course, it's a master's degree level. They tell you how this is actually very good. If you haven't heard of BLS.gov, or if you haven't used it and you are in a setting where you are considering career of any type, not even healthcare, I'm deviating, but this have truly helped me throughout the years, especially at that stage in my life or in my career path or what have you. It gives you a job outlook, which is actually a nice thing that gives you, okay, what are the chances that I will get a job after I graduate and did everything I'm being asked to do, right? And in parentheses, it usually tells you, is it lower than average? Is it faster than average? This one says it's much faster than average. So you bet I saw that and I was like, okay, that means there's a high chance I'll get a job. And because my African self was like, look at here. I want to do this for a lot of reasons, but I will hate to have put in all the sweat and having to live back in my parents' basement, okay? It's I'm just going to put it plainly like that, okay? But you do have other options for looking at salaries and things like that. So, for example, ZipRecruiter has a range of 82,000 to 140,000. Indeed has a 99,000 to 240,000, which is a very wide gap. I don't even know, but this is for California, which I totally understand, because Cali can be like from either if you're talking about the suburb, not suburb, like the rural areas versus the so fancy LAs and Beverly Hills. So just like any other state, right? So it just really depends. But the point is, if you do look at resources like Indeed allows you to look at things for your state. Salary.com is another one that allows you to look at the income of whatever position it is. In this case, of course, we're looking at PAs by state. So you're not just looking at the national numbers, but you're looking at something that's more relatable to you, because if you live in Utah, you want to know what the payment is for Utah. If you live in Arkansas, you want to know what that is. So it really depends. And so I like those resources because they are more specific to you. So if you're doing this for any profession, honestly, I would say start with BLS.gov and dial it down from there to the states. Okay, so I'm getting to the point where I want to be. Well, not yet, but we are looking now at the outlook. So why become a PA, right? As a fellow PA myself, this is a very non-subjective answer. But no, I want to make it clear, I am here for all the professions. For in another world, I would have been a nurse, and I would have been, I'm pretty sure, very happy with it. In another world, I would have been an MD, and pretty sure very happy with it, or pharmacist, or occupational therapist. Those are all positions I consider, and some I even pursued before settling with PA. So, where was I going with it? So recently, physician assistant PA was named the number one jobs, right? So not number one healthcare job. It was also, I think, number one job, healthcare job, but it was named number one job. And you bet you every PA social media, every PA or PA organization was like blasting this on social media, as we should be proud of our profession, and I for one sure am. And I will share the link to this. I will share the link to an article that sort of gives you an idea of how they come up with this thing, because this is US news. This is not like an arbitrary random guy behind the computer or something like that. So this is the PA being first number one job for 2021 is not necessarily like something that I just came up with, because they do this every year, and PA just happened to be the one this year. Okay, so on top of that, in terms of the outlook, I don't know if I was specific about this is the outlook. So so far we've talked about job life work balance. We talk about the salary of PAs. We talk about, and now I'm on the outlook. So the outlook, I talk about PAs being number one job in the US for 2021. And I'll share the article for that. There's also a lot of new schools opening up because of the need for healthcare professionals. If you listen to my previous podcast, you remember that I mentioned the profession itself was birthed from the need for primary care providers, right? They noticed there was a shortage in primary care providers, and boom comes PAs. And so it makes sense that there's still more schools being open, because we still have primary care provider shortage to this day. And so that need is still there. New schools are opening because they recognize the need for it. I myself graduated from a new school. I was the first cohort, and now they're on the fourth cohort, including us. And we have I interviewed Dr. Cardenas. Well, almost Dr. Cardenas, Professor Cardenas last time. And if you listen to that interview, you know she's spearheading a program, or part of spearheading a program at KGI right now for physician assistant. And there's been a couple other programs that's been opening up that are new because the need is there. Okay, so that's that. Now let's talk about autonomy. You are able to open your own practice. There are some guidelines on how to do that in each state and so forth, but I don't want to say all the states, but in a lot of states you're able to open your own practice as a PA. just in general as an advanced practitioner. I mentioned the new laws for Utah and Cali recently, and you will want to look at your different states, right, to see, okay, what does my state allow me to do as a PA, what does my state not allow me to do. And another reason I am doing this is I learned so much when I was in my clinical rotation that's not medicine necessarily. I learned a lot of medicine, of course, but I still remember the conversation I had with NPs, and I learned a lot about their world and what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and their limitations depending on the field they're in. Because one of my first clinical rotation was my psych location had a majority NP actually versus MD. I think 3 of the folks I worked with were NPs, and I got to talk with the provider. He was very happy to chat about the profession and what's going on, what they can or cannot do, and the new laws and lobbying and all this other thing. A lot of things that a lot of us are not necessarily willing to dive deep into it, and I won't bore you with that. But it says healthcare is such broad topic, or healthcare profession is such a broad place to be, especially in this country, that you can be in your own bubble sometimes, not knowing what the other field or the other profession can or cannot do or what have you. And if you are somebody who like collaborating, and if you are somebody who work with NPs and work with MDs or PTs, respiratory therapists and so forth, I encourage you to talk with them and share their knowledge. They're probably not going to know everything about the profession. There's so much about it, but it adds up, and it's much better to hear it from somebody who's in the field than getting online and reading some blogs about it, or at least in addition to that, I'll say. And so I'll end it here, and what I'm going to do is my next time I'm here, I might be talking about pharmacy. I might be interviewing somebody else, but likely I'll be on the mic again before my next interview, unless the other folks I'm working with to get them, and to get them in your ears, or reach out to me before the one I have lined up. Then y'all will hear back from me again before you get to listen to another guest. That's it for now. I'm going to stop it there. I like to keep these episodes shorter because I know my guest episodes are like about an hour, which can be long, but the conversations are so great that even when I'm editing, I oftentimes don't cut much out because, well, they're great people who have great things to share. That's why I have them on the show. And I want you to hear from them and learn whatever you may about them or from them and so forth. I'm going to end this here and say thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing, subscribing on YouTube if you're listening to this on YouTube, for following, liking, commenting, sharing if you're getting this on any platform for that matter. And if you're on YouTube, hit the bell button. I will see you next time. This has been an amazing experience again, and I am your host, Capo Moore. Peace out.